Hi, and welcome to the New Moon Knitting Podcast. I'm Hillary, and this is episode 15. Today on the podcast, I have one finished object, a half-finished object, and updates on 4 whips. So, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so my finished object today are the ribbed socks with strong heel by Danielle Elsbeth. These are a cuff down all over ribbed sock with a strong heel construction, as the pattern name kind of suggests. The pattern comes in 4 sizes. I knit the 3rd size, which is a 72 stitch sock. The gauge is 32 stitches and 44 rows over 4 inches. And it's knit with a fingering weight sock yarn. The pattern uses a US 2, which is a 2.75 millimeter needle. I actually went down a needle size to a US 1.5, which is a 2.5 millimeter needle. And I did that because these socks were a gift for my mom. And I've knit my mom a pair of ribbed socks with 72 stitches on a US 1.5, and they fit her very well. So I just, I knew that was something that was going to work for her. And so I was like, I don't want to mess with that formula too much. So that's why I went down a needle size. And I do think too, for socks and for kind of the tension that I use when I knit socks, I think it was a good choice anyway, because it creates a little bit of a tighter fabric, which is really nice for a sock construction. The pattern recommended a couple of different yarns. I ended up using a Shopple Wool Zauberball, the color 2248, and these are my finished socks. So yeah, let me show you a little bit of them up close, and then I'll talk about them a little bit more. But the last time I showed these on the podcast, I talked about how I had finished one sock and I was like 70% of the way through the second sock, and I didn't like some of the striping on it. So you can see the change in color on these is pretty subtle. Like, colors really fade pretty well into each other. You don't have any real bright stripes on these socks. And when I started the second sock, somewhere in the middle of my Zauberball, there was just like one brighter stripe of the yellowy color. And at the time, I had never used this yarn before, so I was like, okay, I just need to trust the process. Maybe the socks are just going to be very different socks. It's totally fine. But as I was going, when I had finished the majority of that second sock, I realized that that one bright stripe was really an anomaly. It was just the only bright stripe in the whole ball of yarn. And if I started from the other end rather than just like continuing on, I would get a much nicer kind of fade that would match the first sock a lot better. So I ripped out the whole sock, and then I went ahead and I rewound the yarn in the opposite direction so I could start with the other end, and then I knit the whole sock again. And I'm really happy I did, because I honestly can't remember which one's the first sock that I knit, but I think they match a lot better now, because these colors, all the colors, first of all, they both start with blue, which is kind of nice. And yeah, this colors, especially in the cuffs, look very similar. They're sisters, not twins, but they're very close. This looks like an intentional pair of socks. So it was a lot of extra work, but I'm very happy I did that. I pretty much knit these to pattern. The original pattern is like a shorty sock, so I just knit the cuff a lot longer than the pattern recommended. I followed the instructions for the strong heel. So I've talked about this before, but in case you haven't knit a strong heel, you haven't heard of it, because it's not the most common heel construction. It's similar to a heel flap in gusset in that, like, you end up with you do kind of a set of stitches along the back of the heel. And then you have these, like, an increase in the total number of stitches, and then you work your way back down to the original number that you had for the cuff. So you end up with a lot more kind of space in the gusset than you would if you did like an afterthought heel or like a wrap and turn heel, where you have much more of like a straight tube with like a little piece that sticks out for the heel. So I think they make for a more comfortable sock, especially if you're somebody who finds knit socks to be tight sometimes. I think a heel flap and gusset or a strong heel is a nicer construction. What I like about the strong heel is you don't have to knit anything flat and pick up stitches. So rather than knitting your heel flap and then picking up those stitches on after the heel turn, it's kind of hard to see because of this yarn choice, but in the back here, I have a slip stitch heel. So I have this X number of stitches across the heel that are using a slip stitch. And then across the front, I maintain the ribbed pattern. And then in the middle here, there's a little triangle of just stockinette stitch, and that's where you're picking up those additional stitches to create the shape of the foot. So every other row, you're picking up stitches in this little square or triangle here to get the additional space. And then you do kind of just basically like an extra long heel turn like you would on a heel flap and gusset sock to get back to that original number of stitches. And then you just knit the foot like you would any other cuff down sock. The only other change I made, and it might be kind of hard to see on these ones, but I did a little bit of an anatomical toe. So let's see if you can, yeah. So you can kind of see here that rather than them going up into a point in the middle, the socks have a longer slope on the outside of the foot and a shorter slope on the inside where the big toe would be. And then this sock here is the opposite, right? So this is the outside and this is the shape of the toe. I have a little like formula that I have used that helps me convert like what a standard toe decrease, how you can kind of recalculate the numbers to get this anatomical shape. I have not really tested it beyond socks I've knit, but if you want to try it out, I will include that formula in the show notes below, so you can kind of see like how I get to these numbers. But yeah, they came out pretty good. And also I like, so the ribbing goes all the way to the end of the toes on these, which I think is a really nice for like more of like a dress sock type of construction, because it just creates this one really beautiful long line rather than breaking it up with just like a flat stockinette toe. So yeah, I think these came out really cute. Again, they took a lot longer than I thought because I really knit 3 socks while knitting these 2 socks, but I think it was worth it. And now all I have to do is send them off to my mom. It is getting warmer. It is spring here now, but she lives a little further north. So I think she can probably still get like a month or so's worth of wear out of these before it's too hot for wool socks. So yeah, last time before these go in the mail, these are the ribbed socks with strong heel pattern by Danielle Elsbeth. All right, my half-finished object this week is also another pair of socks. These were going to be the Color Palette socks by Laura Moritz, which is a cuff-down colorwork sock that has these like big, bold sections of color interspersed with little sections of twisted rib. In the last podcast, I had done the cuff of my first sock, and I liked how it was turning out. So I finished the heel flap on that, and I had gotten to the foot, and I realized actually, so my colors were, I can't find my ball of the white, but it's just like a standard white, was Cascade Heritage in white, and then this color, which is called Highlighter Orange. And in theory, I like the white and this orange together. It reminds me of like a summer creamsicle. I think it's really pretty. But when I was looking at that sock and the way it was coming out, I realized like it was way too much of this orange and not enough white. And I just wasn't going to wear those socks. So I started to get a feeling about them. And in the past, I have a tendency of like, even if I don't feel great about a project, I will just keep going with it because I feel like I'm much more of a progress knitter sometimes than a process knitter. And so I just want to get things done. And even if it doesn't feel good, I kind of just keep going. But I'm trying to get better at that because then I just end up with things I don't want to wear. So I stopped, I took a breath, and I didn't frog it. I just put it on some scrap yarn, and I was like, I don't know, let's see. Let's try something else with this yarn to see if I like it more. So I put that one away for a bit, and I was like, I like this color. let's see if I can do something that's not quite so much of this. Like, let's make this the accent color and let's make the white the prime color. And I just kind of freestyled a little sock. And I'm saying it's done, but honestly, I haven't woven in any of the ends. Yeah, just keep that in mind. But I ended up making this little like tube sock, which I think is super cute. So what I did was, this is all, I cast on 64 stitches. There's no pattern for this. I made it up. But it's knit on a US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle, I believe. And I cast on 64 stitches, and then I did a 3x1 rib for the whole cuff. I did like 20 rows of the white, and then I did 4-row stripes of the orange. And then I did a wrap and turn heel in that orange color as well. And then I just did a little foot with stockinette on the bottom, ribbing on the 3x1 ribbing on the top. And then I did another little anatomical toe at the bottom. So I like this so much more. I really do. I think I really wanted a pair of like these like old school gym sock inspired hand knit socks. And I think it's just enough of that color to make them feel kind of interesting and like show off a little bit of that. But because white is the primary color, they feel like they're going to be so much more wearable. I'm definitely going to wear these. I can wear them under sneakers. I can, wear them with like loafers and stuff to work. I think I'm just going to get a lot more wear out of these like this than I would in like a mostly orange sock. So yeah, I'm really happy that I made the decision to halt on those color palette socks, and I still do think I will make them. Last time I was talking about them, I mentioned I thought they would be really cute in like a soft pink rather than that bright orange. So I might look at that. I might consider doing them in like more of a neutral palette. I might see what I can do. So the original socks, it's a color palette. So they have a bunch of every section of color is a different color. And so I might need to see if in my stash I have like 5 or 6 colors that would go well together and that I could use to make those socks. So we'll see, but I'm happy with how my little vanilla sock came out. So yeah, for this week, this is my little tube sock by me. All right, let's go ahead and move on to whips. So my first update this week is on my zipper sweater light by Petite Knit. This is a top-down raglan pullover sweater with a zipper, quarter zip, kind of half zip construction in the front. The pattern comes in 9 sizes. I am knitting the first size. This is a fairly oversized sweater, and I wanted something that was didn't have quite as much positive ease as the pattern recommends. So I think if I was doing this according to the pattern recommended ease, I would have done the second size, but I went to the first size because I wanted something a little bit less oversized. It calls for a DK weight yarn. The pattern uses Sandnes Pure Gint. I am using Cascade Eco Plus Hemp in this color Ecru, and then also this color Mocha. And so I did that because these were from Stash, and I didn't have quite enough of either color to make a full sweater. So I thought I would try to stripe my zipper sweater light. And I'll talk about that in a second after I talk a little bit more about gauge. The gauge for this is 20 stitches and 28 rows over 4 inches. It's knit primarily on a US 6, which is a 4 millimeter needle. And yeah, so I talked about my striping. I was really inspired by a different Petite Knit pattern, which is the Key Sweater by Petite Knit, which has this just slightly elevated striping motif. So it's 2-color striping, but the edges of the stripe are such that there's a little bit of interesting detailing on either side. And I really liked that. And I candidly did not buy the pattern, but I looked at pictures of it and I was able to like reverse engineer what was going on. And it was to me, as like a person that's been knitting for a while, it was fairly straightforward what was going on with the stripes. And then it seemed from the pictures, Petite Knit was very, as she's pretty good at like attention to detail and things like that. And I noticed on the raglan on the key sweater, there's a lot of attention to detail to where on that raglan that key stripe pattern repeats. And so I knew if I was going to do it on the zipper sweater, that was probably going to be the trickiest part, was getting that right. All right, so without further ado, let me show you the progress I have made on this. So real quick, let's just admire. Let's take a look at what has been done. It's looking so good. I love it. I love it. So to begin, you start at the collar and you do a double folded collar. I did mine a little bit shorter. I think the pattern calls for a longer collar. But what I did was I have a very similar store-bought like cotton quarter zip sweatshirt that I wear all the time. And I was using that kind of as a baseline for what I wanted to do with the neckline and the zipper on this one. And that one, I measured the neckline on that, and I think it was like 2.5 inches. And so I basically just doubled that so that my neckline was that height. It's not quite as tall as the one in Petite Knit, but I think it will sit really nice for me, kind of where I like my sweaters to fall. Then you do your raglan shaping. And like I was saying, I had to be careful with my counts so that when I started the key kind of stripes, that they lined up correctly. And so I had to adjust my numbers on the sleeves by like 1 stitch, I believe, or maybe it was the body. But basically what it was is like I knew I had to have X amount like of stitches in order to properly repeat this and get the stitches I wanted on the raglan. And so I worked back from that number and took what the cast on was for the sleeve. And I just had to add, I think, 1 stitch so that when I did get to this point, I would end up with the stitches where I wanted to. And let me kind of show you. I still don't think I did as good of a job as Petite Knit, but you can see like on the raglan stitch is where that little like jutted out piece repeats. And that is what I wanted. I didn't want it to like sit like halfway through or not repeat correctly. So I'm happy that I figured out that math, because math is not my strong suit. So yeah, I think that came out really nice, if not quite as nice as Petite Knit does it. Yeah, and then I've just been repeating that stripe all the way through the body. I think I have maybe like another repeat, 2, or like I think 1 full repeat, maybe. Yeah, I think it's 1 more repeat. I'll measure it again. But I'm almost done with the striping, and then you do several inches of ribbing, and then I will move on to the sleeves. Overall, I think I've said it like 3 times now. I really like how this is coming out. I think the only thing I think to say about it is like these colors feel very wintry to me, like this gray and white, and with this like motif, it just feels like a winter sweater. And so to be knitting it in the springtime, it's a little bit, it feels a little weird, but it is only a DK weight. And I think like it's casual enough with that zipper and kind of these like stripes that I think I'll wear it a lot when it's cold, like at night in the summertime, and it's still pretty early in the spring. Like there will still be lots of opportunities, and I think there's probably ways to pair it with like a light pair of denim jeans or like a pair of linen pants to bring it into the warmer seasons as a layering piece. So yeah, I love how this turned out. I'm so happy that I made this decision to add these little stripes. So for the last time this week, this is my zipper sweater light by Petite Knit. My next update is on the Antanilla by SD Wongo. This is a top-down, boxy, drop-shoulder sweater cardigan with these big bands of bobble and lace motifs. The pattern comes in 10 sizes. I am knitting the 3rd size. It's knit for DK weight yarn. The recommended yarn is Hobby Garland. And the gauge is 17 stitches and 26 rows over 4 inches on a US 6, which is a 4mm needle. I believe that was the gauge for like the stockinette portions, and the lace, I don't remember the number for lace, but that was like the main one given. I am using Holzgarn Super Soft for my yarn in the color charcoal. Holzgarn Super Soft is a 100% wool, and it is kind of a light fingering, so I am holding it double. I made a little bit of progress on this. So I basically finished the back panel increases. So you start, man, I've got a lot of strings hanging off of this one. So you start here at the top, and then you work your way out to form kind of the back shoulder and back panel. Like I said, I've just completed the increases, and so I'll knit a little bit straight, and then you go back, I believe, and pick up for the front of the shoulder, work down there, do the rest of the sleeve, and then join again for the main body. So far, I'm liking this pattern. It's just, it's kind of slow going. I don't really knit much lace. It was one of my goals for the year to do some more projects using lace patterns because it was a skill I wanted to improve on. And I am glad I found this because I think one of the reasons I don't do a lot of lace is I don't tend to be drawn to lace patterns. I think sometimes lace is used in patterns in a way that feels very like feminine and soft, and it's just not an aesthetic that I'm drawn to in the kind of clothes that I wear, and so I don't do it because I know I'm not going to wear it. But what I like about this, and actually what I like about other SD Wongo lace patterns, she has another one called Chinook Winds that I considered doing last fall, is I think their patterns just really use a lot of like bolder kind of geometrical shapes, which I think balances out that lace and creates something that's just a little more wearable for me and something I'm a little more drawn to. So yeah, I know black is not a great color for this, but you can kind of see here, like you have these like triangles, and then there's some twisted rib to like emphasize the chevron kind of triangle shape. I will say the pattern has baubles in it. I just decided not to do the baubles. I figured I was not going to wear this as much if it had a bunch of baubles on it. And so one thing at a time, let's focus on learning a little bit of lace. Yeah, the whole thing is charted. So this is like basically the whole back chart that you start with. And so I like that because I find it easier to read a chart most of the time for big things like cables and lace and things like that. But because it's a chart, I have to read every single row. So it's definitely not like mindless knitting. It's very focused knitting. And that's not a knitting I have a lot of time for in my regular life. I tend to be like multitasking when I knit. And so, yeah, it's coming along. It's probably maybe a 2-season slow moving project, but I am enjoying it. And so, yeah, that's all I want to say for this week on the start of my Antanilla by SD Wongo. My next whip is another hat for charity. So I have a goal this year to try to knit one item for charity every month, or even out to 12 items by the end of the year to donate to charity. And so for the month of March, I decided I was going to knit another hat, and I just decided to knit another Oslo Hat by Petite Knit. So this is a bottom up hat knit in 100% stockinette with like a triple folded brim for extra warmth. I knit one of these in January using Lion Brand Respun as my first charity knit of the year, and I cast on another one for the month of March Partially because I was going to the movies. So I went to see a movie last weekend and I wanted to have a pure stockinette project I didn't really have to focus on while I was in the movie theater. So it had to fit in my purse and it had to be pure stockinette. And so I thought, let's cast on another Oslo hat so we can get some more charity stuff going. The pattern comes in 7 sizes. That was a release this year that Petite Knit did, an update to the pattern. So it now comes in 7 sizes. I am knitting the 3rd size, which is like the junior small. The pattern is knit on a it's knit on a 3mm needle. I think the pattern says that's a US 3, but that's a 2.5. So I'm knitting mine on a US 3, which is a 3.25mm needle. And I am using Lion Brand Respect, which is a recycled polyester blend. So it is 45% recycled polyester, 30% acrylic, and 25% cotton. And the color I'm using is called Evergreen. And this is what it looks like. So yeah, it's a really pretty speckled yarn. And it is a 100% machine washable and dryable, which is what I love to use for charity knitting. So yeah, I have I'm almost done with the brim. So this is what it looks like knit up. That is a really nice, I like it. It's a really pretty color. So basically for the Oslo hat, you cast on the number of stitches needed for the hat, and then you knit a big long tube. And then what you'll do is you then go back and you pick up those edge stitches with your live stitches to create that double folded brim. Then you continue to work up to the crown, and then you do your crown decreases. That's basically how it's constructed. I have knit this before. I like it. It's a really great mindless hat. And I think too, it is a really, I don't know, it's just like a classic hat. Like it's a real universal shape that I think is truly unisex. And yeah, it's timeless. And I think it's a great little pattern. So yeah, this is my progress so far on my Oslo hat by Petite Knit. And my last update today is a new cast on. I started on my Rybka pouch by the Rat and Sea Witch on Ravelry. So this is just a really cute little fish bag that comes in one size really, but 2 different lengths. So the lengths they recommend is like, one is for like an AirPods case size, and one is for like a pencil case size. So a longer and shorter little fish. It's knit with 2 yarns held together, a fingering and a lace. The gauge is 25 stitches and 28 rows over 4 inches in garter. So it's knit in stockinette and garter stitch on, again, a US 2.5, which is a 3mm needle, and is not a needle size I have. So I knit these on a US 3, which is a 2.25mm needle. Because I knew I was going to have a lot of this left over because I wasn't using it as the main color on my socks, I am once again utilizing my highlighter orange Cascade Heritage sock yarn, and I am holding it with a Mono Uma. This is a 37% baby Surrey, 37% kid mohair, 26% mulberry silk blend, and this color is 1973, but it is this really bright orange color. There we go. And so yeah, I'm holding these 2 together. And I am making the shorter size that it says is good for like an AirPods headphones case. And so I finished my first little half of a fish. So this is what it looks like. So you start with this section of stockinette, and then you do garter to like represent kind of the scales on the fish. You do decreases, and then you increase again for the tail, which utilizes some twisted rib to create, again, this like little fish pattern. So I'll knit 1 more of these. This was so fast. This took me maybe like an hour to do start to finish, maybe a little bit longer, but like I did this all today. like in between things. I didn't even really sit down to focus on it. So I will make a second one of these little fish sides. And then the pattern says to use single crochet to connect the two pieces together. I will try that. I do not do much crochet, but like a single crochet kind of chain, I think I should be able to do. If I don't, I think I can work some sort of like mattress stitch or something similar to connect the two sides. And then I think like this piece is long for like the fish's face, but I think what you do is you fold, this piece part gets folded over so that you can run like a drawstring basically through the top so that this little fish bag closes. Yeah, really cute, really fun little pattern. I was thinking, this went so fast, and while I was making it, I was thinking this would be a really good way to use up more of this yarn. Not this one specifically. This is going to use like, I don't know, 15 grams of yarn total. It's not going to be a big stash buster. But I thought if I like it, I think it's cute, I could scale up the size of this, right? So I could hold 4 strands of fingering orange yarn that I'm not going to use for anything else, hold that all together and knit it on like, I don't know, like a US 10 or US 8, something like that, with the same stitch counts, and end up with like a cute little like project bag that I could use. But yeah, I do think I can take this and modify it a little bit to make it a lot bigger, to use up some yarn and also have like a really cute little fish project bag or something like that to carry around with me. I could even probably make like a pillow or something like that for the house, but I do think this is a fun way to use up a color that I have in my stash that I just don't know what to do with, really. So yeah, so that is so far, the Rybka Pouch by Rat and Sea Witch. All right, so that is all I have for this week. If you liked the podcast, feel free to give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of what I'm doing, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.